I'd recommend anyone who's trying to get into Salesforce to not. It's kind of the same thing I told my customers when I was a consultant, right? It's like, don't
Mm,
worry too much about Salesforce, right? Like, you can take a bazillion trailheads and everything like that, but if you really want to progress in your career and really want to differentiate yourself, understanding of things like data tables, like building out, because I mean, at the end of the day, Salesforce is just a UI for a database. Meet someone and they say they use Salesforce. A lot of times I say, do you use Salesforce? Yes. Do you hate it? Yes. Okay, great. Then my job is to make you not feel that way, right? Like, I think those big wins of fixing a bug that's been happening for a long time, or improving
mm,
process, or even surfacing the right Tableau report, right? And people come
mhm.
back to you and say, man, this feels great, right? Like, this works. I'm feeling efficient. Like, empowering Salesforce users is what really gets me excited, right?
Yeah.
20-year-old systems through 10 different product teams, Apex, installed packages, the whole nine yards. And the company's products are sold, even though products are similar, they're sold very differently.
Mhm.
So in such a short amount of time, there was talks of, well, are we going to be able to push everything into a new greenfield Salesforce? And I was like, no, we're not. You cannot do that in 3 months, right? Not with all the legacy and everything.
Hi everyone. In this episode, I sit down with Samuel Tucker, Director of Salesforce Platform and Product Strategy at Learning A to Z, a literacy-focused educational provider of technology-enabled learning solutions. We're going to discuss how to treat your company's Salesforce like a product and users like customers, how to build a big picture platform strategy, thoughts on AI, challenges of managing and scaling a Salesforce org, what's missing in the Salesforce ecosystem today, and more. Hope you enjoy. Hi, Samuel. How are
Hey,
you?
good morning. Or looks like it's evening your time, I'm guessing.
Yes, 7 p.m. actually.
Oh wow, okay, gotcha. Thanks for making this work on for East Coaster.
Yeah, thanks for accepting the invitation and joining me today. I'm super excited to chat with you.
Yeah, likewise. I actually had a podcast for 3 years about the Magic the Gathering, the card game. So used
Mm.
to be on camera for that. So I was like, yeah, that
Oh,
sounds like it could be a good time.
yeah, sounds cool. I launched this podcast with the goal to create a community where advice, experiences, ideas can be shared and implemented anywhere.
Sure.
Yeah. I looked into your LinkedIn profile and your experience looked impressive. And I saw that you were a Salesforce admin at Wells Advisory company. And my first question would be, uh, was it an was it a accidental story or
Yeah. So I was actually my first career was I was an IT recruiter hiring software engineers, mostly in the financial industry space, and I ended up finding the technology part of the job much more interesting than the recruiting. So I actually went back and got my master's in computer information systems, and the program was through the business school at Colorado State, and it was very open-ended, right? Like, they don't just churn out software developers. It's a little bit more rigorous than just a certification program. So a lot of people leave there and become like project managers and that sort of thing. So when I started at Mariner, I was actually more of like a business analyst. I actually started on their help desk as an intern, as a 30-year-old.
Mm,
And eventually, once my internship completed, they saw that I had really good organization skills. They saw that I had taken the classes for, they've been taking the classes for business analysis and project management. So I actually kind of became like the product owner for this big migration from a legacy Salesforce into
mm,
FFC, brand new cloud there. And eventually that kind of got put on hold. So I was looking for something else to do, and no one
mm,
wanted to pick up production support tickets. So I kind of started there. Just started kind of getting more into the technical side of Salesforce, writing some test scripts, doing some Apex and that sort of thing, and then kind of became more of like an admin developer, like one of those people where
mhm,
I could jump into Apex, but some of the guys there were really sharp. They had really, really strong coding skills. They were coders first, and then went into Salesforce. So I kind of went through that path there, and then got into consulting and that whole world, and then now
mm,
back in house. So it's been kind of all over the place, but yeah, it was definitely, and kind of fell into it, right? Salesforce is a
mhm.
$3 billion company, so I figured is a pretty safe tech space for job consistency and growth and all that.
Yeah, that's a huge ecosystem, I would say.
Yeah.
And actually, did your consulting experience help shape your current vision when it comes to the Salesforce as a owner type of things?
Yeah, it definitely. I think, I hate to say this because I really don't like, business jargon terms, but the thing that I
Hmm.
think consulting really helped me with was this idea of the art of the possible, right? A lot of people, we would be doing things like, how do I say, we would be doing processes and things like that. And I think the consultants or the people, they're really excited about Salesforce, right? Like they're really excited about this new product, right? It's like a Christmas for them. So, and of course, Salesforce, we all know and love them, right? We all know their account executives. They all have their strategies and their own goals to make and everything there. So, they get them all psyched up. Back then it was more CPQ and insurance and that sort of thing. Now it's all agent force, right? So I think one thing that can kind of build bad habits with from an end user of Salesforce is they think first about the Salesforce product, right? They want to know, can it do this? Like I read about this online,
Mhm.
right? So I'd always say like, let's wait for that, right? Like when I'm just tell me what the problem is, right? Take Salesforce out of this, take software out of this. Just tell me what your issue is,
Mhm.
holistically, and then we can work that way, right? Because even though
Makes sense.
Salesforce, yeah, and like I mean, Salesforce is still a controlled sandbox. It's got its limitations, but you can really do some incredible things with a platform. And I think getting too down in the muck and mire of what cloud you're in and all this other stuff can kind of lead to you're putting the cart for the horse a little bit, right? So I think the consulting world was a really good place and is a really good place to really kind of understand how to get business needs and requirements. Um, there for a lot of the shops I worked at, they're fairly small. So I ended up kind of getting it was a really good crash course to go from an admin at like a pretty big company to, I think it was my first consulting company. I was the fifth employee or something like that, right?
Mm.
And it really was a crash course in how to be how to think through from a solutions architecture, right? How to think through how to do things quickly. A lot of that I think has gotten better with like how flow works, and there's a lot more UI things that you can do. But I think the consulting world is really, really good at conceptualizing difficult ideas and having and forcing yourself into finding
Makes sense.
solutions for them on
Yeah.
like kind of a timeline.
Well, actually, what are your current
Yeah.
tasks or projects that at Learning AZ?
Yeah. So Learning A to Z, this is a software company that's owned
Hmm.
by this company called Cambium. I actually worked here as a sort of consultant a few years ago,
Hmm.
and then was brought back on. So when I got hired in late September of last year, about 2 weeks earlier, there had been an official announcement that they were merging with another company called Explore Learning. So
Hmm.
Cambium holds a bunch of different properties and a bunch of companies that all do education software, right? Mostly through K through 12. So I kind of came into the fire. We had hired a consulting company. And the big thing I noticed was they had two legacy, we're talking legacy, right? Like
Yeah.
20-year-old systems through 10 different product teams, Apex, installed packages, the whole nine yards. And the company's products are sold, even though products are similar, they're sold very differently.
Hmm.
So in such a short amount of time, there was talks of, well, are we going to be able to push everything into a new greenfield Salesforce? And I was like, no, we're not. You cannot do that in 3 months, right? Not with all the legacy and everything. So we were working with the consulting company, and they talked a lot about phase two, right? Of this is what new code is going to look like, all these bells and whistles. And I kind of came in with my consultant hat on and said, that's great and all, but like we need to figure out what we're doing by the end of the year, right? Because starting next year, we are going to have these two orgs that are going to have to work together, right? They're going to be separate. We're going to have our sales teams and account executives pivoting between the two of these, as well as customer success and all that stuff. So I think that was my first big like project to work on, right? So within I was joking with my I there's a manager, a technical manager reports to me now, and he was like, yeah, I thought usually when you get into some of these projects, the first few months you actually are just learning how the systems work, not completely rebuilding them. So, way to pick that
Yeah.
up, which again is another consulting skill. So yeah, it was a lot of kind of quickly trying to understand how each product is being used, and then really finding out what is the MVP, right? What do we have to
Yeah.
do to get this thing rolling? I have there is already established Salesforce teams in both of theirs, so it's also kind of understanding them and their skill sets and getting them kind of up to speed in the two different worlds. So it was, that was tough, but we had an extremely tough deadline. Um, Most people at this company, they mostly have families. It makes sense with the education space. So usually like the last 2 weeks of the year are dead. I was the only person on. So, even though I'm a director level, I was doing tests and writing user stories and
Yeah.
building some reports and updating some flows and things like that. But we made it work. And now the new challenge is both we're in a kind of a hypercare of both of those hypercare season that'll probably be ending at the end of the month. So it's a combination of identifying the quick wins, the enhancements that we can make to these legacy orgs, knowing that they're going to go away at the end of the year, and then now starting to build the requirements and understanding what the new code is going to look like. Right? How are we going to pull these two different pricing models? How are we going to pull all this stuff into two different spaces? So it's definitely a challenge. There's a lot of people are really, really smart and dedicated with current state processes. And we're really trying to encourage everyone to say, it's brand new, right? We're
Yep.
having a brand new org. We're moving from CPQ, which is not my favorite product in the world, to RCA, which hopefully will be much better. And really kind of thinking like, okay, what do we need to do to kind of get away from this old style and into this new one? So it's a lot of liaisons between our data management committee. I come from a lot of my school was in data architecture, so a lot of the stuff I've done previously in consulting is like data mapping and making sure that that's all looking good. So it's a big project to get our arms wrapped around, but everyone's really excited. And we're getting ready to start the first sprint in March to get things moving in the new cloud.
Hope everything will go smooth. Yeah. Uh,
That's a hope. So that's why we brought on a really strong consulting company to help us with it too. So
yeah.
they really earned the trust, and really showed that they're really putting the effort to feel more like a partnership than a client, which can be rare in the consulting space, especially with a project this big. So I think they're doing a really good job of getting an understanding of our course business strategy on top
Yep.
of just the technical aspects. Yeah.
Absolutely. You work for a consulting company, so you should be able to understand who will be a great fit for your company
Yeah.
because they
Yep.
have
Yeah.
the
There was,
expertise.
it's delicate balance, right?
Yep.
I try not to be too negative or driving for it and let them kind of take the wheel. But I think that we really do have a good group of people, right? There's our lead kind of business architect is super sharp. He's knows the business almost better than I do at this point. So that's great. And like there's some developers that they are bringing on that are really strong. Like I said, I've been
Mm,
working most closely with the data migration because even though
mm,
it's going Salesforce to Salesforce, there's thousands of fields between the core objects, let alone custom ones, and migrating
yeah.
everything from CPQ. It's and making sure that the storage limits, because again, Salesforce doesn't do a great job at storing large amounts of data, at least from a cost perspective. So yeah, there's some work cut out for us, but I think we're asking the right questions and getting the right answers and kind of moving forward as a group, as a unit. So that's been really exciting
Mhm.
to see too as we go into this new greenfield engineering effort.
Yeah, you work as a technical recruiter, and does your experience help shape your vision when it comes to selecting a new team or a new people for your team who would be a good fit, or the ability to read between the lines, or
Yeah,
perhaps there's some benefits, sorry, some benefits in personal life, or something like that.
yeah, absolutely. We're still kind of figuring out what the ultimate look is going to be for our team, right? But I think
Mm,
coming in, and there wasn't really someone before me ever really who was kind of a lead for Salesforce, right? We had my associate and direct report, Rick, was doing a lot of the technical part of it.
Mm.
But we've talked about this. He has a very strong engineering and architecture. He's been a software engineer at this company for 20 years, right? So he started working on their proprietary systems and then moved into Salesforce because there's just a gap for it. Whereas I come from much more of an operations business sort of mindset. So
Yep.
that's been helpful kind of figuring out where we can complement each other. And then also now that the dust has kind of settled with the combination of the two companies, really trying to understand where the team of two that was at the other company and the team of four that was at this new one, where we can kind of best integrate, where we can best um, meet each other, where we can help grow everyone. So I think there's, we haven't done much hiring yet. That probably won't be till next year, but there's been some help of kind of understanding knowledge, skills, abilities, all that sort of stuff, and how we can prep and set our employees and the people on my team for success. Not only by doing a good job what they're good at, but also figuring out what the next step looks like, right? Like when we're not having to manage two different systems at the same time, that's going to free up there's some admins that may end up going into more of a BA role. There's some developers that might go more into integration than just straight Salesforce work. So I think a lot of understanding org charts and all that stuff definitely came from the recruiting style. So yeah, it seems like everyone's happy, or so they tell me. So I'm gonna go with that.
Sounds cool.
Try to keep it light. So
Build versus customize versus buy. How do you approach that decision, and how do you prioritize what to build next?
yeah. So a lot of it comes from a lot of those decisions are kind of made above my level, right? Especially when
Mm.
we're talking about renewals and products and things of that nature. So a lot of that is dictated through there, right? So a good example of that is MuleSoft. So we currently are paying for MuleSoft. It's a lot of money, right? And it's pretty much only being used. It's a great product, right? Like I used it before, but it's pretty much only being used for one function now. We have a database, and MuleSoft is pulling information from that product database back into Salesforce, right?
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Mm-hmm.
we don't really have another middleware option, and I think that MuleSoft works. I think MuleSoft works really well when you're a MuleSoft shop, right? If MuleSoft becomes our integration point between all different devices and all different systems, that's where I think you get a lot of benefit from that product.
Mm-hmm.
Um, we're not there yet, right? And we don't have a MuleSoft engineer, right? The Salesforce engineer I mentioned earlier, he comes from more of an integration background, so he's kind of
Yeah.
running that. And the decision has pretty much been made that we're going to sunset MuleSoft during this year. So
Mm.
using kind of my data architecture knowledge and everything, we're going to be building our own sort of in-house middleware using some open source systems that is going to kind of be the hub of everything
Yeah.
going into out of Salesforce, right? There's different teams that kind of manage their own intake of data. So one decision we kind of made there was like, that's fine, that's
Mm.
okay. But as far as it goes to Salesforce, we're going to build out a platform that's the way into and out of Salesforce, right? So obviously that's a big lift. So making sure that the engineer gets access to all the right tools and support from that has been kind of where that goes on its side, right? So the fact that we have some very streamlined and unique skill sets as well as a consulting company helps us a lot in terms of being able to be agile and move between different projects. So obviously, the first thing that comes up in terms of what needs to be worked on are going to be, hypercare. I believe, have you heard about this, like the three horizon strategy of IT? So the first horizon we're kind of at horizon 1 to horizon 2, right? So the first one is like the system works, it doesn't crash, people can do their jobs, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of the number one priority. If CPQ is acting up, if people can't submit quotes, those sort of things, that's number one, right? We all kind of get together and rush to that point. So that's my team's first priority. The second one is going to be enhancements to the existing orgs, right?
Mm-hmm.
So again, like I said before, we don't want to get too crazy into it. In fact, one of my admins who's learning to be a developer, as kind of an exercise, I had them look at this project and come to me and say, hey, you know, I want you to build this out how you would think you do it as a developer, right?
Mm, mm,
And we went through it, and it's a really good solution. But I think we kind of decided, it was worth taking a couple weeks to figure it out. And then now it's like we may not even use that in the new code,
mm,
right? So is there another way you can go about it, right? Give me a level of effort if we just change an Apex code. So
mm,
that's kind of like there in the middle. And then the big priority for me is the new code, right? So making sure that the requirements are being understood and translated correctly. I'm going to be kind of the point person and product owner for that whole project, right? Of doing the initial round of UAT, making sure it's running smoothly, giving people access and all that. So um, as far as the customize and build and all that stuff is concerned, right now it really comes down to budget, right? So a good example is
mm.
like the MuleSoft thing. So the
Yep.
tools that we want to use, MuleSoft is costing us 6 figures a year for doing one thing, right? And if we wanted to
Yep.
do more things, we'd have to get agreement across different business units. We'd probably have to hire a dedicated MuleSoft developer, all that stuff. Whereas using these open source tools is a couple $100 a month, right?
Yep.
So it just makes it so much easier to free up that time, as well as gives us complete control over it. So I think that's where a lot of things come from. As far as other like build versus buy, a lot of that's going to kind of come down to our consulting company, I think. I think we're going to try to do as much as we can. And one thing that I think is really going to be great in the Nuco is it seems like they are. I am a big proponent from a technical perspective of let's start with flow, right? Let's
Yep.
start with declarative development, quote unquote, right? Which is a dangerous term, and that's a dangerous weapon, right? In the wrong hands. I've seen plenty of flows be built by admins and people that maybe don't have as strong as coding standards.
Yep.
But yeah, we're encouraging them to use flow kind of firsthand, and then talk about what tools we have available, what tools they recommend, and how we can kind of combine all that together. So for me, I think it's never if someone tells you they're a build shop or someone tells you they're a buy shop, I don't believe it. I think it's gonna have to be you kind of have to do a little bit of everything to get it to work the way you want.
Yeah, okay. If you had to rebuild your current Salesforce org from scratch, would you do anything differently?
Yeah, I wouldn't use CPQ for starters. I no, that's a joke. Yeah, I think there's been so many hands and so many hands on keyboard and so many
Yep.
consultings that it's really kind of in people, switching document repositories and all that.
Yep.
So I think the thing that we're doing a lot better and we're working towards that this new co is the name of the new company, Lazzle, is
Hmm.
what it's called now. It's really forcing people to make decisions on what tooling and where things are stored, right? And there's going to be change. There's always hurt that comes with change, right? But I think kind of streamlining what systems we're using to track work, streamlining systems, and integration points. Like I said, I think all that stuff is going to make this whole thing, paint this whole picture a lot clearer. There's a lot of old Apex code that could probably be retired, but we just didn't. That was kind of one of my big, when I was getting ready to start, I was really excited about that because I know that that's an old so we were doing a big push on getting rid of workflow rules and process builders, and then that all had to stop
Hmm.
because we just had to get the ship running. So I think using a lot of the new Salesforce tools around flow, we're talking about new experience cloud. So whatever that new version, RLM or something, that's a little bit
Hmm.
more of a technical coding space for experience cloud. I think a lot of that and making sure that whatever changes the consulting company does is very clearly documented. I've told them that I'm expecting like a playbook at the end of
Hmm.
this so that when they
Makes sense.
leave next year, that sort of thing. So I think that now we have me to kind of set the roadmap and to work across the business. We have my technology manager underneath me to kind of handle the more technical decisions and code reviews and architecture, and then some really strong engineers and admins under that. I think the new team that we'll have moving forward the new is going to make the new Salesforce environment and team be a lot more visible, be a lot more high velocity, and hopefully not have as many. I
Hmm.
the I the thing that I always say is like grandma's ham, right? Like your mom gives you a recipe, and they're like, "Why do you do that? Why do you add in the brown sugar here?" And you're like, "I don't know." Right? That's just how you have to do it. that makes a lot of constraints in terms of, if someone quits or if they go on
Hmm.
sick leave or something like that, or are out on vacation.
Yeah.
It leaves a lot of dependencies on individuals instead of dependencies on knowledge. And I think trying to get away from that in this greenfield world is going to be something that will make it a lot easier to maintain and a lot easier to make upgrades, to do R&D projects into, and all that good stuff. So I don't want to speak on the initial legacy Salesforce systems that we have because I wasn't there to build them. So I'm more focused on how we can do it right, how we can do it best, not right, in the new world.
Yeah. Okay, makes perfect sense. I'm actually curious, what do you find the most challenging part of your job currently? Is it managing the team, or is it managing the change that is it deciding what to move forward with, or what is that like?
Yeah, I think it's there's I think the most challenging thing is that we're kind of we were working on getting a more agile deployment development style, right, with sprints and
Mm,
releases and things like that. And then unfortunately, this new combination kind of took away that we don't have the reps to kind of manage that anymore. So I think
mm,
one thing that's challenging is that it's hard to get all of the requests from the business in one place so that we can show them, hey, if everything's a priority, nothing is, right?
mm,
And not having a roadmap or not knowing what's going to be coming down the pipe from an operational perspective necessarily, that's been tricky, right? It's right now, it's been a lot of, we're very much in a, even from an engineering perspective, we're very much in a response state, right? So
mhm,
someone submits an issue that dictates what we work on. We work till that's done, then we kind of go down the next issue, right? It's still, even from an engineering perspective, we're still very much like a Kanban to-do list, that sort of thing. So I think that's challenging to show the business what my team's working on, right?
mm.
Um, it's tough to show because again, I don't want to give them too much information, but you need to give them something, right? So I
Yep.
think getting all that information together from the business side of things and then determining what's the biggest priority for the business and comparing that versus the level of effort it'll take my engineers to handle it, right? That all factors into what the roadmap and release schedule should look like. And again, just because everyone's still, there's a lot of changes in management, there's a lot of changes in responsibilities, there's a lot of changes in roles and people who had been, leading a team for 10 years, that kind of got upturned and they may have new team members and need no
Mhm,
new system. So I think we're now getting to a point. I told my team and everyone, like, Q1's gonna be rough, guys. Like there's gonna be a lot of changes, right? Like we're a lot of flying by the seat of our pants. But
mm,
I do think it's starting to slow down. I do think we're getting more to I think we're getting more to a cadence that's long term, a cadence that's workable, and really starting to get a good buy-in from business on their priorities. So the team's great. They've all worked together. They're kind of managing
mhm,
themselves in a way. Rick, who I mentioned, is my tech leader. He's doing a lot of the one-on-ones with them and making sure that they're hitting their goals and marks and everything, and that's going really well. So yeah, so I think just bringing the business into the fold, making sure their voices are heard, and importantly, they feel like they've been heard. That's kind of the
mm.
the big challenge right now. So the technical aspect, it's funny, I was hoping it was going to be all technical issues and just going through and I'd be putting hands on keyboard a little more than I am now. But that I
Mm.
think that's not what this, I not what this team or what this role needs right now.
Yeah, I see. Okay. What inspires you in this Salesforce domain? Is there anything? It could be like Salesforce events, Salesforce HANA, your team, your company, part of things that inspires you.
Yeah, I think, it's this is kind of a nerdy answer, I guess, but like hearing people, because 90% of people out there, if you meet someone and they say they use Salesforce, a lot of times I say, do you use Salesforce? Yes. Do you hate it? Yes. Okay, great. Then my job is to make you not feel that way, right? Like I think those big wins of fixing a bug that's been happening for a long time or improving
Mm,
process or even surfacing the right Tableau report, right? And people come
mhm,
back to you and say, man, this feels great, right? Like this works. I'm feeling efficient. Like empowering Salesforce users is what really gets me excited, right? and making sure that the platform that we're spending a lot of time and resources in isn't a frustration to use. So I think from a personal perspective, we have a really good opportunity to start this combined organization off on the right foot by building this new environment to be great, right? And
Mhm.
to hear what's frustrating and research what's out there that can make it happen, right? Can make it faster, can make it more reliable, because that's going to enable them to sell better, which is going to make us look even better. Um, Things like that are what's really exciting to me. I think there's a lot of runway here for this company to grow. I think there's a lot of runway for Salesforce to continue to be this sort of, you know, source of truth is kind of a weird term that we're
Mhm.
still kind of discussing what that means. But I really am inspired to make sure that my sphere of influence is Salesforce and the data coming into and out of it, right? And I
Mhm.
want that to be rock solid because that's going to make everything easier downstream. So, I think that's really that sort of not the necessarily the aha moment, but
Mhm.
this is a game changer, right? Like just changing an error code and chasing that down or taking out old stuff. I think that sort of that sort of feel like the customer's been heard and that it's been worked on. That's what's really inspiring to me. And I think, it's a smallish company, about 300 people. So
Mhm.
it's not someplace that you can kind of just go and hide in a cubicle for a while, right? You will be found and people will let you know what they're looking for. So I think getting those quick wins, getting a really stable, strong platform, that's really exciting, and it's an exciting time to be
Mhm.
involved in so much of that.
It
So
looks
yeah,
like, yeah, looks like you treat your Salesforce users as your customers, and your customers as the ones who provide you with the feedback that shapes your vision, and that vision helps you understand how to move forward with that. Yeah. Uh,
yeah, exactly. So we're still it's 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 listening to the customers and figuring out what makes the most sense from the technical side and the work side, right? So,
mhm.
I've already told people for this phase two, there's likely going to be enhancements that you're going to want that we're just don't have the time for. It's a short time window to build a whole new system out, but
Mhm.
they will be heard and they will be prioritized and they'll be worked on, starting in January when we roll over to the new system or late Q4. And I think, again, as I said earlier, having this team and not having to have the maintenance and technical debt between these two older orgs are going to let us. I think it's going to get users in the mindset of like, this works now, this is great, but like if we could just change this thing or add in this automation or something, that would save
Mhm.
me, an hour a day or an hour a week, right? And then that just starts stacking up. And once we get that done, it frees them up to think about other exciting things and ways that we
Mhm.
can continue to improve the system and scalability of it. So that's kind of that's kind of the inspiration for me, and being in a role like this where I'm still very technical in terms of design and architecture, but really kind of being the face of the system for the end users. I think it's just really given a lot of great opportunities to grow and learn and really be a part of something that's moving the needle. Which is again, I've taken every test I've ever taken from a personality perspective is I'm not a guy that comes in and presses the same button every day, right? Like bigger picture, bigger vision, figuring out what can be game changers. That's where my real strengths lie, and that's what the role here at Lazzle is providing me. So I'm hoping that my end users and customers feel the same way, and they're not just throwing note cards in a box that's never going to be opened
Mhm.
again.
I'm curious, what questions do you ask to yourself to create this big picture? So how do you create this big picture for
Yeah.
you?
That's a good question. So it's tricky because I'm not a sales guy, right? And
Yeah.
our system is really based around sales, right? I've worked in customer service, I've worked in help desk. So the
Mm-hmm.
previous role that I had here, we stood up something where they ran everything out of Salesforce, right? It was service desk. And
Mm-hmm.
that was an easier picture because it was new there too. And the questions were, okay, how can we make how can we make it so that each user is only looking at one screen, right? Not swivel chairing
Hmm.
between a bunch of applications. So here it's a little different because it's a lot more focused on the sales cycles and interactions there, right? So I think for me, at least from that perspective, it's really that the sales cycles and all that stuff is really more driven from the business, right? Like they will tell us what their product codes are, and then they're going to be. So I think the big picture I ask myself is how can we make Salesforce this hub and how we can make it a trusted source for them, right? That kind of led into me taking on like being a lead on the data management company or data management committee, right? Because right now there's not really a streamlined way of doing that, right? And figuring out, and that's again where it's like the business and technical side, right? Because the salespeople won't know that, right? They won't know there's all this stuff happening behind the scenes, but our invoicing, our accounting teams, all that stuff, are all there's so many different pieces there that Salesforce is going to end up making a massive impact into. That was also become my business, even if they don't work for Laszlo, right? They work for Cambium, which is the that owns us. So I think just thinking through that sort of big picture, this is what Salesforce can look like. How do we get there? That's where I'm kind of at now with this project. I think once we're in the new code, it's a lot easier it's a lot easier to be more strategic about it, right? And say, what do we want to accomplish in Q1? What do we want to accomplish in a year, right? Like, what's this roadmap look like? And is it things that I'm seeing that I think we can improve on? Is it things that my team are seeing? And, I want to get to a point where if one of my engineers, finds finds a new cool tool or, finds a new way to do things, a way to consolidate two flows into one, a way to write a better Apex code, right? We're rolling out this big Agentforce pilot as well. That was a success, and we're expanding it in a few months. I think those questions will be easier, right? Of how do these tools that we have, how do we improve upon them, both from our technical side, which may go to the user, but also how do we expand them? What else can we roll in, right? And kind of figuring out how to get there. Those are the kind of questions that I like to think of from like a higher level, right? And it's a different thing. It's definitely a different shift from the consulting architect mindset, right? Because there you're kind of only thinking of the project, right? So you're
Yeah.
looking at SOW, looking at user stories and all that stuff, right? But
Yeah.
once we're done with this conversion at the end of the year to the new co, we're not going to have they're not going to have a statement of work, right? We're just going to have our business users and leaders kind of helping us dictate what the picture is going to be. So it's a combination
Yeah.
of that, right? So not getting too focused in on one piece of that, not getting too focused and down in the muck and the mire of the technology itself, but how do I enable my team? How do I enable business? How do I enable operations to use this platform as efficiently and cleanly as possible? So yeah, so like I said, it's been an interesting time to come in here for sure, but it's been great. And like I said, there's just a lot of runway, a lot of improvements we're going to be making over the next year, which I think are just going to be big game changers for
Hmm.
our users.
It's super cool that you mentioned that Salesforce is not a project but a product. And
Yeah,
I wanted to ask, I want to follow up with the question, what advice would you give to yourself back, like to your younger self when you were just
yeah,
starting out and starting out with the Salesforce as a product, not a project?
yeah. I think the thing that I'm really happy with was not going. I'd recommend anyone who's trying to get into Salesforce to not. It's kind of the same thing I told my customers when I was a consultant, right? It's like, don't worry too much about Salesforce, right? Like you can take a bazillion trailheads and everything like that. But if you really want to progress in your career and really want to differentiate yourself, understanding of things like data tables, like building out, because I mean, at the end of the day, Salesforce is just a UI for a database, right? Like
Yeah.
if you cut it down to its core thing, that's all it is. There's underlying data. And the better you can understand that data structure and the better you can understand the way the data schema works, right? So um, I was lucky because I'd taken so many data architecture classes in grad school that kind of came naturally to me, right? And even recently, a friend of mine who he's a Salesforce architect now. He actually
Mhm.
started for me as an intern many years ago. He was asking me about these new rollouts for FFC because FFC just redid their data model. And I came and I was able to pretty much explain it to him. I took some time off to explain to him as engineers. And they were like, oh, we didn't think about it that way, right? Like they hadn't actually looked into the actual underlying system. So I think
Mm.
I think understanding data and if you really, Apex. A lot of people say they wish they would have learned how to do Apex earlier, which is fair, right? But I think the other thing that's helpful is more thinking, just a mindset of thinking like a developer, thinking like an engineer versus an admin or something along those lines, right? Because even though admins and a lot of them can do flows, a lot of times they may not be the most efficient, right? They may not, they maybe end up being bloated and things like that. And I think the people that are really good at that have that engineering mindset of, you know, writing clean, reusable code. It's the
Hmm.
same thing in flow, right? Like you need to make sure that it's clean, it's future proof, it's that sort of thing. And I don't think that necessarily getting a bunch of certificates or trailhead badges kind of enable that, right? So I'm really
Yeah.
glad that I ended up going back to school and getting like a more of a core engineering understanding. I just wish I would have done it in college instead of grad school. I wish I would have done that when I was 22 instead of 30. So
Mm.
that's a big thing. Is I wish I would have switched it around. But I think things happen for a reason, and
Hmm.
it all ended up working out for me. So that's a big thing is I understanding data structures, understanding integrations. If you can understand that, even at an admin level, you're going to put yourself well ahead of a lot of people in the market. So yeah, go back to grad school, I guess.
I see. Cool philosophy. Yeah, just
Yeah.
I would like to thank you. Taking the opportunity, I would like to thank you for your transparency and for sharing the experience because I think it now not only resonates with the audience, I think, but only resonates with me actually. Yeah,
Oh,
because
great.
I was also thinking about what are your thoughts on AI? Agent for you mentioned agent first, and I'm
Oh,
really curious. What do you feel about AI? Do you think this is like a game changer or something like that?
I don't know. I mean, it's funny because I can use it to write D&D modules faster than I
Mm,
can type them out, right? But I think that I don't think it's going to be as replacing people as it is, right? I think
mm,
what AI is really good at is taking away manual work, right?
yeah.
Um, you know, taking notes, writing up user stories, things like that. Those sort of things that are easier to conceptualize
Hmm.
from where AI is right now. The things in Salesforce that are pretty cool. There was one demo I saw that was well, there's a lot of people that were worried because there's like it's called Salesforce Admin Force or something. I don't even know. I haven't looked up, heard anything about it, but it was pretty much an AI that would write setup stuff for you as an admin, right? You could
Mm,
write flows. It could automate new user scripts, things like that. And that's all fine. I think that's great, but you still need someone there to run it, right? You still need to make sure that someone's uh, that it's doing its job right. I think where stuff like Agent Force is going to be really helpful and is proven out is things like customer service, right? And
yeah,
um,
definitely.
there's a it's funny because after I built out live chat, I can now tell when they're using Salesforce or not. When I'm on different websites and trying to do their chat bots, and I've done that a couple times. I sent an email. I noticed one of them had a vulnerability, so I took a screenshot and sent in the code snippet. I was like, you guys probably should fix this. I sent it to the customer support. So I don't know if that ever came up, but I think there's even in the last few years, there's been massive strides with that. The other thing too that I think it's that Agent Force is going to make a big wheel move on is things
Mm,
like opportunity and customer management. So we had an AI pilot that really focused on that on our sales late last year before I started here, and it really helped people keep things, instead of having to go through 100 reports, a bunch of list views, things like that. Like it just kind of helped them find the lowest opportunities they could find. We built some prompts that would
hmm.
show me the last three, um, show me the last three deals that opportunities I haven't touched on, right? And just pull it right up in screen and go from there. So I think that those sort of agent force from Service Cloud and Sales Cloud, those are where they're going to make the biggest changes. Where it's still lacking is in the nuance of it, right? So I've had it come up with an XML. I've had some Copilot or something try to write XML for a flow, and it was a disaster. Like I think for me, I think where it's great is like the starting point, right? Like, give me the framework for an Apex that will handle a change off an account being updated, right?
Hmm.
And it'll give you like the baseline of it, at least to kind of start, so you don't have to sit there and like hammer all that out or try to use some plugin or something. That's where I think Agentforce is real, or that's where I think AI is really enabling people in the Salesforce world. I think it's letting them, and that's what I was talking about with like the manual tasks, right? And automating notes from conversations that then get populated into the description field and things like that. Um, anything that reduces copy and pasting, anything that reduces spreadsheets and the amount of work that goes into that, I'm all for. That's where I've liked AI really taking over. So um, we're doing another pilot for Agentforce for both of our sales teams starting in May, and then we're going to expand it out to customer service. Um, Still up in the air on if we're going to get a live agent chatbot, but one of the other places I was working at, we were right on the tail of implementing that, and there's some really cool stuff there. So I think again, it goes back to, everyone's now getting that AI certificate because it's free or cheap or something like that. But you can't. It's something that in my opinion, it's ultimately something that's just another tool in your tool belt, right? It's not something that's going to completely replace work or people or teams or anything like that. It's my take on it.
Yeah, it
And
makes
like I
sense.
said, it's great for writing up characters for Dungeons and Dragons or editing articles and things like that. Stuff I hate doing. So it's kind of played my hand about how big of a nerd I am, but
Hmm.
it's pretty common in this space too.
Yeah. Yeah, AI is just in terms of time. As of now, just AI is a tool, and I don't see it can replace someone in the Salesforce domain. Just currently, I don't know
Yeah,
what future holds for us, but as of now, yeah, makes sense.
agreed.
Is there any feature that you see Salesforce should build for its customers, and it's not there, but you would like to it for to appear?
Mm. Um, I mean, the thing that's funny about that is if I say something, Salesforce will inevitably buy it in 2 to 3 years. So, like see Slack, see MuleSoft, see Tableau.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that's their new model, right? Is they're just going to find the Revenue Cloud Advanced, so that they don't have to pay for CPQ licenses anymore, right?
Yeah.
I think Salesforce does do a good job of talk about the buy versus build, right? They're
Hmm.
like, oh, MuleSoft can do all this, we'll just buy them, right? And then we'll roll that into your renewal invoice.
Yeah.
I think the main thing that I think there's still a lot of companies and people. One red flag whenever I'm interviewing someone and I ask them about
Hmm.
change sets, they don't say immediately they're horrible. It's a terrible way to manage it. Then it's a red flag for me on an interview. So I think eventually they were working on something that was like a CI/CD tool that was free for a while. So this is okay. The two things that I think were the most hairy are having to do things in Visual Studio and keeping another app, Salesforce DX, and then their CI/CD pipelining, right? So when I went to Trailhead DX 2 years ago, they had just rolled out the code builder, which is in the
Hmm.
UI, which was great. And then they were working on their in-house CI/CD tool, which had a lot of promise, but never really felt like it got off the ground. So now the code builder, I think, is paywalled behind
Hmm.
some other agent core situation. You have to pay for it. And I haven't seen anything on the CI/CD. So I'm wagering to guess that the next big purchase that Salesforce is going to be coming down from um, is going to be a CI/CD platform like GearSet or Talend, or what's the one that people there's another one that people use a lot that I've a Capato. One of these
Hmm.
things that is built out for CI/CD is probably going to be the next big purchase, which is going to be huge because again the change sets are an abomination in my opinion, and it makes it difficult for people to use. And then yeah,
Hmm.
the in-house code that might be something they're going to fix with Agentforce, but an easier coding platform that's better integrated. I know there's options like there's one that's in what is it? In I can't think. There's another big one that's in a different IDE than VS Code. Yeah, those are the two things. I think those are the two biggest barriers to entry for growth from a technical perspective. So like I think they solved some of the reporting stuff with Tableau. They solved some of their integration work with MuleSoft. But yeah, the platform, the pipelining, and the another one. I got it. This is what we need: better automated testing. We need a dedicated Salesforce built automated testing tool, so I don't have to go and write it in Selenium every time. And again, like there's a lot of so that's a big buy not build, right? And there's a bunch of different things out there that have their own pluses and minuses. You know, if you go to the App Exchange and search automated testing, there's 1,000 things, right? And a lot of them are just Selenium servers. Some of them are a little bit more higher powered, but the testing, I mean, they started making waves in the flow tests, but those, if you don't build them right, they're very hard to migrate between the two instances. When you refresh, a lot of times those get wiped out. So I think testing and more robust automated testing is something that's severely lacking that's provided from Salesforce. That'd be my number one.
How would you like to structure the learning process for new employees that will be using the Salesforce, or they will be learning the Salesforce in the company? What would you show them first, and the second?
This would be like an end user.
Yeah, end user.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So number one is reporting, because that should be we have different reporting teams, but that's the number one thing is enabling them to do reporting and dashboards, right? Especially from a sales perspective. And I think it also just depends on profile, right? So obviously, if it's sales, they're mostly going to be using it for closing quotes, closing opportunities, and that sort of thing. For people that are more operations focused, I would show them some of the setup stuff, but that just kind of depends. And I think just more holistically, what I do, we're doing this exercise right now too, right? Of let's find the 5 to 10 profiles of Salesforce users and what they would use, right? And what they need visibility into, right? Do they need a full license? Do they need a platform license? How do we enable that, right? And I think going through and building out a playbook for each one of those roles is really helpful. Understanding how cases work and how they're related to things. It just depends. So I don't know if there's something that I don't think there's like one thing that every person would look into, but I think depending on the role, just walking them through, right? I think a lot of people are visual learners, so screen shares, screen captures, things like that are the ones we've run reports where we get surveys and what's the most helpful training, what's the most helpful, playbook thing, and everyone says videos, right? Salesforce is such a visual medium intentionally, right? That's the beauty of the product almost. As I said before, it's just a fancy UI for a database. And I think enabling them there and enabling them to do their role best is just completely one-to-one, right? I would say for admins and things like that, learning how to do object schema and setup and figuring that tool out, because it's great, even though it's old, that could probably use an update too. And understanding again, like the data and how it's all linked together. I don't know if this is the right thing to do or not, but there's a lot of people I saw that were like, we're going to make there's one or two things that they didn't like, so they created a brand new opportunity object, and then that's what they're using, right? So on technical debt project, I just came and was like, you don't need any of this, right? Like there's so many automations already that are in Salesforce. When it comes to how this is connected, you're just over complicating things. Instead of blanket saying these are the things that you should learn or know in Salesforce, what I would recommend is learning what the person's trying to do, right? Kind of goes back to the same thing of, I'm a customer support rep. Okay, so knowing that, you probably don't really care about opportunities or anything like that, right? So we can skip that whole piece of it. And the other thing I'll say the last thing I'll say with that is, like, once you do that, then you can get into things like building the correct apps, right? And locking that down and making sure that each salesperson is using the same app with the same page layouts that works for that entire team, right? Same with customer support, same with operations, all that sort of thing. So thinking about it by role instead of by Salesforce, I think will help you enable those people a lot easier.
Makes sense. Okay, Samuel, thank you for your time, for joining me
Yeah,
today. Yeah, we're running out of time, so I will not, yeah, I'll respect your time. I remember you said that you have a hard stop at 2 p.m.
yeah.
Uh,
Unfortunately, I know. I also am a bit of a chatterbox, which is rare for people who are engineers too. So part of the HR and recruitment, I think, still a part of that. Like to hear myself talk.
mhm. Yeah, overall, thank you for joining me again today.
Of
It
course.
was super exciting to chat with you.
Have a nice night.
Have a nice day. Bye bye.
Bye.